By the time you've built something remarkable, sometimes the most honest thing you can say about it is that you'd trade an afternoon of it for one very quiet Tuesday. Lucille Ball might have understood that better than most. She was one of the most driven people in the history of American entertainment. Not just talented, though she was profoundly talented, but relentlessly focused on the work, on the business side of the work, on doing things no one had done before, and doing them exactly right. She co-founded a production company at a time when women didn't do that. She fought for creative control at a time when the industry didn't offer it to anyone who looked like her. She was funny, yes, brilliantly, effortlessly funny, in ways that made it look easy, though it never was. But offset, behind the drive and the discipline and the relentless ambition, those who knew her well described a person who, more than almost anything, loved quiet, who preferred a small dinner to a large party, who would rather be home on a Friday evening than at any premiere, who, when asked in later interviews about her happiest memories, kept returning to days that sounded, by the standards of her career, remarkably ordinary. She once described a morning she'd had, early in her career, before everything got as large and complex as it eventually did, when she had nothing scheduled. She'd been given an unexpected day off, and instead of filling it, she had done almost nothing. She'd sat in her kitchen with a cup of coffee for a long time. She'd read something. She'd gone for a walk with no particular destination. She'd had a long conversation with a friend, the kind where no one is watching the clock, where the conversation goes wherever it goes, where nothing needs to be accomplished. She said, years later, that she still thought about that day. Not because anything significant had happened, but because it was the day she had most felt like herself, fully, simply, without any of the usual noise. And that, she said, was harder to find than it sounded. Those who worked with Lucille Ball over the years spoke about her tremendous focus and drive. But they also spoke, sometimes with surprise, about how much she seemed to want the opposite of all that, when no one needed anything from her. How much she valued a quiet room, a simple meal, a conversation with someone who wasn't trying to get anything from her and wasn't offering anything except company. That contrast between the enormous external life she'd built and the simple, quiet thing she actually seemed to want is worth sitting with. Because it's a contrast many of us recognize. We work hard to build lives full of activity, achievement, and motion. And somewhere inside those busy lives, quietly, we long for something much simpler. A slow morning. A walk with no destination. An afternoon that demands nothing from us. Maybe you felt that too. Maybe you've built a life that looks, from the outside, full and accomplished. Family, work, responsibilities, a full calendar of things that needed doing. And maybe, somewhere inside all of that, you found yourself sometimes longing for something much simpler. Not a lesser version of your life, just a quieter one for a day. A morning with nowhere to be. A long conversation that doesn't have a purpose beyond the conversation itself. And maybe you've been waiting, without quite realizing it, for, the time when things slow down enough to finally have that. When the kids are grown, or the job is done, or whatever the next threshold is. Waiting for permission, in some form, to choose simplicity, instead of having it chosen for you by necessity. Here's something gentle to consider. You don't have to wait. Simplicity is available in very small doses, and even small doses have a real effect. A single slow morning in a week full of busy ones. A single conversation with no agenda. A single evening where you turn things off, the television, the phone, the sense of things that still need doing, and just sit. Lucille Ball's quietly perfect day wasn't rare because the world didn't offer such days. It was rare because she almost always filled the space before such a day could arrive. And when one did arrive, she had the wisdom to notice how good it was, and the honesty, later, to say that it mattered more than almost anything she'd deliberately built. That's worth sitting with. Not as an argument against achievement or ambition or the drive to build things, but as a reminder that the quiet moments we tend to defer, the ones we tell ourselves we'll get to eventually when things slow down, are often the ones that most reliably contain what we were working toward all along. Simplicity is not the opposite of a full life. It's often the heart of one, the part that makes the rest of it sustainable and meaningful and connected to something real. The quiet that allows you to remember what you're doing all this for. Maybe it's time to build a little of it in, deliberately, not as something that happens when you've earned it, but as something you simply choose today, because you already have. And there's something worth saying here for those who find quiet genuinely uncomfortable. For some people, especially people who have been busy their entire lives, silence can feel strange, even unsettling. Not peaceful, just empty. Like a stage with no one on it, which is fine if you're in the audience, but disorienting if you've spent decades being the one on the stage. If that's true for you, starting slowly makes sense. Not a full quiet day, just one quiet hour, or even one quiet half hour, where nothing is required of you and nothing needs to be accomplished. Let yourself be awkward in it at first. Let it feel a little strange. Most things that are genuinely good for us feel slightly strange before they feel natural. Lucille Ball spent decades making other people laugh, giving them relief and delight, and the particular pleasure of feeling like the world isn't entirely serious all the time. And what she said she needed, herself, was the same kind of relief. From the busyness, from the expectations, from the relentless demand of being Lucille Ball always for everyone who needed her to be. Just a quiet Tuesday with nowhere to be and a cup of coffee that didn't have to hurry. If you're watching this tonight, maybe there's a version of that Tuesday available to you. Not this week, if this week is genuinely impossible, but soon. Not as a luxury, not as something you have to earn, just as something you choose, because you've finally decided that the quiet is worth having, and you don't need to wait any longer to have it. There's a particular paradox about people who build very big, very full lives. the very qualities that make them capable of building those lives. The drive, the focus, the inability to let things be undone are often the same qualities that make it hardest for them to rest in those lives once built. Lucille Ball was a perfect example. She built one of the most successful entertainment empires of her era, not by accident, but by sustained, deliberate, relentless effort over decades. And the engine that made all of that possible was the same engine that made a quiet Tuesday so rare and so valuable when it finally arrived. Most of us recognize some version of this in ourselves. The habit of busyness runs deep. It becomes a kind of identity, a proof of worth, a way of feeling like you're doing something with your time. And stepping away from it, even for an hour, can feel strangely like losing ground, like something will go wrong, like you should be doing something instead. But here's what that quiet Tuesday actually produced for Lucille Ball. Not lost ground, not a problem she missed, a memory she carried for the rest of her life as an example of what it meant to feel like herself. To feel, for one ordinary day, that her life was exactly the right size. That's worth more than we tend to give it credit for. The feeling that your life is exactly the right size, not too big, not too stretched, not full of things you're managing from a distance without quite inhabiting. Just right. Present. Yours. You might not be able to create that feeling every day. Most of us can't. Life has its demands, and most of them are real. But even once a week, even once every 2 weeks, a single morning or afternoon where you step out of the busyness and just exist in a simpler version of your day can do something quietly profound over time. It reminds you what you're there for. Underneath all the activity, underneath all the roles and responsibilities and things that need your attention, what's actually there when you take all of that away is still you. And that person, given a quiet morning and a cup of coffee, usually knows exactly what they need. Lucille Ball said the best days were the quiet ones. Not because the busy days didn't matter, they clearly did, but because the quiet ones reminded her of something the busy ones sometimes drowned out. That the whole point of building anything is to eventually be able to sit quietly inside it and feel that it's enough. If you're watching this tonight, maybe that's worth sitting with too. Whatever you've built, a family, a home, a body of work, a life full of people who depend on you, maybe part of honoring it is occasionally just sitting inside it, quietly, and noticing that it's already enough. So take a slow breath, and maybe, this week, set aside one quiet hour just for you. No agenda, no phone, just the quiet and whatever you find there.